Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Board Member Riley. At this time, we would just like to give an opportunity for the board members to briefly introduce themselves. And we'll go ahead and get started. If you would like to start, Board Member Riley, and then we'll just move to Board Member Dominguez and then Board Member Aiken. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. My name is John Riley. I've been a member of this community for 42 years. I have served in some capacity in the city of Opa-locka for the past 38 years. I was a previous member of the Civil Service Board for a little more than 12 years. I've served on how many boards in this city? The Housing Authority, the Community Relations. I can't get all of them, but just hope like doing the job, like serving its community, and I sponsored this ordinance back because I think there's a need for the rights of all persons involved. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Good evening. My name is Audrey Dominguez. I'm former commissioner of the City of Opa-locka. I'm also an advocate for the resident city of Opa-locka. I been a resident for over 24 years, and I'm very happy that we're putting through the Civil Service Board to help the employees and anyone that has a need. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Randolph Akins. I have previously been a board member for about 14 years. Also served as a union president for 20 years. Been a city employee for 44 years. And I truly believe in helping out when I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, board members. So at this time, we'll go ahead to item 6 on the agenda, election of chair and vice chair. If among the members, you want to nominate someone as the chair, and then go ahead and, you know, if we can get a consensus from the board, and then also the same process for the vice chair.
I go. I nominate Mr. Riley for the chair.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now we should have a nomination for the, I'm
Audrey
sorry.
Dominguez, your mind, Brandy?
No, I don't mind.
Audrey Dominguez?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And at this time, we have item number 7, which would be a presentation by the city attorney, Bernadette Norris-Week.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And I'm sorry, before you begin, Madam Attorney. So I realize that we have the actual wrong ordinance here. If you allow us an opportunity while you're making your presentation to go ahead and make copies of the appropriate ordinance that was actually passed and adopted in 2018.
Okay, and what I'll do is I'll just go through generally, just so you all know what was adopted, and you'll know what changes are being proposed. Through a couple of things that you should know, which relate to the fact that in 2021, 2 union contracts were adopted by the city of Opa-locka, approved, and that was after long negotiations had taken place with both unions, including the police union and ASME. And so many of the things that are in the ordinance that passed, which has now been incorporated into your code of ordinances as Article 11, Division 5, entitled Civil Service Board. There are a number of different things that are no longer relevant to how the city actually operates. And as a result, and you can find those in Muni Code, those sections in Muni Code. But as a result, we have, and also as a result of the negotiations that have taken place, we've been in communication with management and had intended to put forth changes to the last ordinance that was adopted back in 2018. So, which contains a lot of stuff, and I can go through some of the things that are no longer relevant. You all, with this meeting, you're a little bit ahead of us. We wanted to try to have a human resources person on board because some of the things that are specified in the current ordinance are no longer applicable, or maybe those things have been done, or we don't know where the documents are, or perhaps they haven't been done. And so it would, since the human resources director is really charged with making sure that this board is manned, so to speak, making sure that there's some oversight for this board, the person who's going to eventually clerk the board, and that office is sort of responsible for working along with you all in more of a direct way. We really wanted that person to be in place. That person has not been hired yet, and there are some things here that will probably, even after a change that we make just to get you started, if that's what, you all want to do, we still will need some things done, which means that we'll probably end up striking some things from here just until we can, so we can hollow it out and not have the city responsible for things that are not going to happen or are not likely to happen, and in some cases not happening now. So let me be a little bit more specific, and I understand that the clerk's office is going to pull the ordinance up or get the ordinance for you.
Madam Attorney?
Yeah.
Just for the record, the correct ordinance has been provided. It's 1806. What it is that attached to it is a previous ordinance from 2017, which actually failed. But the correct ordinance has
Okay.
been provided. It's ordinance number 18-06.
Okay, great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So in the code, it starts with the Civil Service Board, Division 5 starts with powers and duties. And it says specifically that the board shall have the power to advise the commission and the city manager on issues concerning personnel administration, advise and assist the city manager in fostering the interest of institutions and learning, civic, professional, and employee organizations in the improvement of the personnel standards in the municipal service, and hear appeals in any any officer or employee in the classified service, service is suspended, reduced, or removed, and report in writing to the city manager its findings and recommendations. And finally, to perform such other duties with reference to personnel administration not inconsistent with a charter as the city commission may require by ordinance. And so I have writing all over my paper, so forgive me. But what the change would be to this section, or what I recommend a change would be the commission would be to limit review to classified personnel, classified employees, and classified service does not include employees not currently covered by PERC. That's what we would, because right now you have a list that's gone to PERC of the people who are supposed to be covered by PERC. And so it would not be, and what it actually means, maybe I should tell you what it means. It shall mean those employees paid hourly for purposes of the FLSA standards, and specifically they're paid on minimum hourly wage and overtime rates, plus 1 1/2 times the hourly rate if the employee works more than 40 hours per week. So that's one of the recommendations that we will be making to limit it more. But that's so that this board could actually have it's something to like oversee, but in all honesty, the areas for how procedures go in terms of disciplinary issues and everything else are covered by both the union contracts to include PBA and the ASME contract. I mean, they actually specify in them what kind of things are to happen. But this board could have oversight authority on issues where it's not management, people in management, like we wouldn't want to cover the city clerk, myself, the city manager. We wouldn't want to cover or it would be unusual to cover people who are directors or, in managerial positions, those folks, or elected officials or appointed officials. Those people would normally be covered under, in terms of review, nor would there be anything in place that would conflict with the current negotiated contracts that we already have, because there will be liability issues. And so there will be some language put in place in the new ordinance that would specify these things. There are certain things that are set forth under powers and duties of the Human Resources Director. And right now, some of the things that are here are, probably, we don't know. That's why we really do need a Human Resources Director to know, whether some of the things are even practicable, because it says, for instance, under 2-530 to hold competitive examinations for all appointments in the classified service restricted to persons qualified and to perform the duties of the position. Now that makes sense, but I don't know if all would be practicable. So we would look at adding some language like where practicable, something like that. There's also other language, if you go down to 7 of that same section, and it has, language about that person certifying all payrolls for person in the classified service, no payment for personnel service to any person in the classified service of the city shall be made unless the payroll vouchers bear the certification of the Human Resources Director or his or her authorized agent. We don't know whether that is being done right now. I don't think it is. And that we wouldn't want to put something in here that may conflict with what, operationally the electronic systems may provide for. So that could be an issue. There are other issues that are in here, which may have been applicable at the time that it was written, or it may have just been leftover language from when it was in the charter, which I found some language like that. I even saw a reference to the word charter, which obviously this isn't in the charter anymore. So there's, there's some work that needs to be done with this ordinance that you have before you. And we were again trying to wait until we had a Human Resources Director in place that we could work with that could direct some of this. But as it stands right now, our intent would be to not have you all deal with anything that deals with unclassified service, which again are members of the city commission, the city clerk, city attorney, city manager, directors, members of boards, like this, persons employed to make conduct or special inquiry, investigations, examination, like temporary employee type people. We would be making a recommendation that it not relate to folks that are in those positions, that you strictly look at classified employees. We will, in the new ordinance, define that more clearly so that there won't be, an issue as to what you would oversee. And in terms of the Human Resources Director, if you look at 2-535 in that area, there are a lot of things that are set forth here that says like within 1 year after the appointment of the first director under this article, the director shall prepare and submit to the city manager a plan of classification and grading of all such positions. You know, these are all things that we don't know, honestly, if these things are in place or not. And, you know, and probably what would have to, this is the part that would be hollowed out because it would depend upon, you know, what is in place, what do you have? And so while there are processes to deal with how you would go about a grievance procedure if somebody has a grievance, those are processes, the city follows them every day. Those wouldn't really relate. I mean, those are in the ASME contract and they wouldn't really relate to what we're doing. The other thing here, they wouldn't relate to what you're doing here or what's specified here. The other thing that I want to bring to your attention, which has come up, and Ms. Shemeka can attest to this, we sat in on the police benevolent association negotiations, and there was there were discussions upon multiple meetings where there was no intent for this civil service board to relate to the police union. I mean, it just wasn't contemplated because there are processes and procedures that are specified. And so it wouldn't be a re-review here of something that happened where there's an arbitration process and a process that relates to how those things are reviewed, including you know, appeals with the city manager and other places. So that was never contemplated. So I don't want anybody to be surprised that that is one of the things consistent with our negotiations. And I know, you know, there's a pending issue that we're all getting email about, but I will tell you that that was never contemplated. In fact, there were specific discussions about that, not the police union not being related to the civil service board, and changes that were even made to make that clear in the police union contract. So I don't have a whole lot more to tell you other than one other very important thing that I think you all will be interested in that I don't think should be in there, and it protects you all. Section 2-539, where it talks about prohibited acts, penalties for violations. There is right now for you all, any person who by himself or with others willfully or corruptly violates any of the provisions of this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and shall upon conviction thereof by a court of competent jurisdiction be punished by a fine of no less than $50 or nor more than $500 or by imprisonment for a term not exceeding 60 days or by, and it goes on, but it deals with a person willfully or corruptly makes a false statement or, you know, something like that. And I don't know that it's just limited to people who may come before you because it's not that clear. So my recommendation would be to, you know, to make that clearer or to remove it so that there isn't, you know, any kind of a fine or anything like that associated with certainly your service. So those are in a nutshell. One of the things also you may want to be aware of, and if you all want this to be something different, you can tell me that now, and that could be another change. But right now, this board, the chairmanship for which Mayor Riley has been appointed, it's only it's only for 6 months because you're supposed to do it twice a year pursuant to this ordinance. I don't think you necessarily want that, right? So that's something that's 5-33, and it's paragraph B, and it talks about it being done for the board chair to be appointed biannually. So that's twice a year. So that's about it, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. First, Madam Attorney, it's been the history of this board that union employees have an option. The option was either they can come to the board or go to the union. They can't do both. That has been the history. That's been the practice here. The second, it has never been the practice of this board to deal with unclassified employees. We've only done with classified employees. That's the history of the board. Third is that we hope, and has always been from the office of city attorney, the attorney be appointed for the board, specifically for the board. And we hope that do happen. And then if there are issues dealing with the rules or dealing with the ordinance, we will have workshops to where we can resolve those issues and collectively make a presentation to the city commission. And we can do that, hopefully. My understanding of this board and understanding what has been with it for the past, whether I was very familiar with it a number of years, working with it even before I became a member. I get where you're coming from, and hopefully we can do that collectively. We get some things done. Where there is conflict, we can recognize the conflict. That's why we have a workshop and do those. What we would like to do is to analyze the ordinance and identify the conflicts or the problem areas and what the recommendations may be. We would do that on a constructive basis. And I think it's something that not only the attorney's office would be involved, but it'd be all of us involved in that. Is that a problem?
Well, what I had contemplated honestly was to, because this is moving along so fast, is to get this before the city commission on a first reading. So perhaps before the second reading, you all can meet as a board and you can see, but I just don't see how you can actually meet and start doing things if you don't even have an ordinance that makes sense. I mean, honestly, you look at this, it just doesn't even make sense. There's so many things. And I just want to address one other thing. When you talked about an option, there is no option in the contracts that we're legally bound by, that we've signed off with these unions. They don't have an option there. So it would be, so they would, let's say they come and they exercise this, they would still say, no, we have this is right, and they would be right. So there are so many issues that have probably changed since this was drafted. And honestly, I think even since, I think the 2018 one, I don't know even who did it, but the 2018 one should have picked up stuff, because there had been an existing contract in place with PVA that conflicted with even some of this language already. So really the 13, I can understand that because you hadn't changed your, it had gone out for a referendum, but 2018, some of the stuff really should have been already picked up and it wasn't. So I don't want you to think I'm coming in and making wholesale changes. I'm just, as the legal counsel, I'm telling you, it doesn't even make sense when you compare it with other things that we have to consider. And I would be not doing my job if I just kind of sat here and let you all go forward and do whatever you're going to do, because it just doesn't even make sense. And we haven't gotten this far yet because we hadn't had an HR person, which we really need in order to complete this in a proper way and for you to do what you need to do to get started. I mean, you have Ms. Lawson here, who is kind of taking over HR responsibilities, but that's not her background. And I know they're actively looking for someone, but that person is really supposed to work with you all to give you the information you need for you to be effective for your roles. And we don't have that right now. So
I understand that. And a big, like I say, I think I would recommend that you include the board in whatever you deliver for first reading. And also, I just wanted for the record, is that state of Florida is a right to work state. And all of that has to be considered, that's under our constitution. Other than that, I would appear, we, should schedule ourselves on the, third Thursday of each month. And that's what we would do, for the time being. And, we'll, hopefully we'll review what the attorney is recommending for first reading. If not, if we don't get it, it's public record, so we'll see what it is then. Anything else that has been brought up, Madam Clerk, if it comes through your office, you can let us know, email or by text or phone mail, and we can go from there. And I'm going to take the ordinance that we have here tonight, and I would suggest all of us review the ordinance. And if I can, Madam Clerk, give me a copy of the original ordinance. And I'm gonna do some comparative things. And we'll go from there and hope that we can come up with something that we can work with. Okay? If there's nothing else, Chair, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Question, I was trying to understand what the city attorney is saying about the union members. Is she saying that they can't come before the board, or they took it out of their contract? Because it was either, and it was because of people who was not part of the union, didn't want to be the union, but they still needed an avenue to come if they had any issues.
All of the employees, all of our classified employees are not members of the union. All of our classified employees are not required to be a part of the union. So, but there was an option. She's saying that there is no option, but
Well, as to the ASME contract, let me look at that and make sure. I know as to the PBA contract, because we specifically discussed it, that wasn't contemplated, but let me look at the ASME contract. I don't remember that, being something that was in that contract, but I'll look at it. And Mr. Akins, and I will get back with you all.
It has been there from day one. It has been
Okay.
there from day one, and when they took some stuff out the contract, that wasn't part of it. My memory served me correct, that's still there. Because that was one of the main things that we wanted in the contract when we negotiated the contract. I think it was 89, somewhere around in there.
Well, for purposes of what we would be recommending anyway, I think most of those employees would probably fall under what the definition would be of folks who, and this board would, again, serve the appeals. It would be an appeal. It would be just advising the manager on something that's not already gone through a process. So just keep that in mind. So maybe it's, it may not even be relevant, but because it's an appeals process, and it's intended to be for classified service people. And many of the folks under the ASME contract will probably fall under the, hourly wage, getting, time and a half if that's warranted under federal law. So but I'll look at it and we'll make sure, we report back on it.
the unidentified persons were manager, the commission, any of the board members, assistant managers, assistants to the city manager, secretaries or administrative assistants to the directors, assistant directors. Those persons are.
I'm sorry, Chairman Riley, can you speak into the mic? Because when we transcribe the minutes, we're having a hard time picking up audio. Thank you.
Okay. Unclassified personnel were the manager, assistant manager, assistants to the manager, administrative assistants to the manager, directors, assistant directors, administrative assistants to the directors, and what was known back then as secretary, but they're military assistants, the city commission, the city clerk, board members. Those are unclassified employees. All other members, in accordance with the rules, are classified. And
Now, also, one of the things that you may have missed is unclassified under this current ordinance is even employees subject to subject to collective bargaining agreements. So that's unclassified, and employees that are subject to the collective bargaining agreements would be that ASME and that, that PDA. So if that's the case, you all would not have dealt with that or had the authority to deal with them anyway.
Well, that's where the options were, but I don't know, I think we had some issues with the last, with the attorney and some stuff that was done. We would address that as we go to the commission. That's one of the issues that has to be addressed.
But you follow me, right? So currently even under this current ordinance, that those requests that you're getting from, a certain officer's attorney to see them or whatever, that is right now under the current ordinance wouldn't even be allowed, because they would be considered unclassified.
Not as an appeal, as an appellate, correct. But other than appellate, there's a whole different story. That's water for another day. Okay. You confused? All right, go ahead.
The attorneys mentioned.
Speaking to the mic, please.
The attorney mentioned the fact that the employees in part of the classified bargaining unit at ASME is not classified or unclassified.
No, what it says is under unclassified in the current ordinance, it lists employees subject to collective bargaining agreements would be unclassified. So, but what we will be doing, just so you know, we'll be seeking to make anyone who's unclassified not be a part of what you would review. So if it's a manager, like think about it, if it's let's say a department head who is terminated for whatever reason, that person is a salaried person, wouldn't be, somebody who would be considered someone that you would normally review as a classified employee. That's not going to be a classified employee. That's not somebody who's, 40 hours, hourly employee. That's a salaried person. And that person is, and this is an at-will state, as the chair mentioned, it's an at-will state. So they're not they're not covered by PERC, they're not covered by, any of that, because they have managerial responsibilities. They're not covered by the union contract. So that wouldn't be someone that you would be talking about having an appeal from. So
Well,
that
we've always considered those at-will employees
Right.
that did not come before us.
Right, okay.
Madam Attorney.
okay.
That has been our history. What we were able to do is that we hear complaints. To give you, for instance, if the board decide we wanted to investigate whether or not we had a hostile work environment, the board can do that and reach a report and do a finding. And its finding is conclusive.
When you say conclusive, I want to just stop you there, because I don't want there to be, this is an advisory board. So it's not,
Well,
it's conclusive in terms of your,
we can argue about that.
but it says it right here in the ordinance, but it's conclusive in terms of your opinion, right? But it is not
Our
binding.
findings are
Yeah, your
conclusive. That's what I
in
said.
terms
The
of your-
findings
yeah,
are conclusive.
Right, in terms of, but I just don't want to mix up terms, because conclusive normally doesn't go with advisory, right? Because it's just, your findings are findings, period. And they are findings that the management can accept or reject. They're not binding. And so, that's all. I'm not arguing or being argumentative. I just want to make sure I don't, I make it.
Well, we can argue that, Madam Attorney. I've had a judge to say that our findings were conclusive.
Okay.
So, that's water on the bridge. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But that's what the court has held previously. we'll deal with that.
Right, well, that
Right
may
now.
have been, and you and I have talked about this already, and I just want to make other people aware. But that's probably when, and I asked you the question, I said, was it before it was changed by the charter? And you told me, yes, you had some court opinions prior to it being changed by the charter. Now it's different. And so it even starts with in this ordinance, which it's funny because it doesn't actually say it in the one that you were the one that passed out, but in the one in Muni Code, starting with 2-526, it starts with the board should have the power to, and it's each one of the section or the first two is advised. So you're right in terms of you all can, ask and create reports or, do certain things like that, issues regarding, deal with issues and advise on issues concerning personnel administration. But these are still advisory. They're not, they're not binding on management. You're advising, you're serving as a board that would hear things, even if there's an appeal, for instance, that somebody comes here and I'm not even sure why they call it appeal, because it's not like you're changing anything. If it's, even if they come here and you disagree with whatever management did, whatever you're doing would still be advisory to the management. Well, we think this. Okay, the manager can still say, well, I don't think that, and
Well,
I'm gonna
reason
stick
I'm
with the
gonna-
opinion.
I'm not gonna go on with it, Mr. Madam Manager, because the courts have held, if that was the case, there is no, their appearance is for no.
That
That's
may,
what-
and
that's what the court has said.
that may
Their
be,
appearances, so there has to be an
Mhm.
appellate process. It has to have a meaning. If it has no meaning, then it's there for no. And if
Mhm.
not means that the person right is not there. So we'll get into that.
well,
We'll get
well,
into that.
well, it's
eventually,
not like it's a
but-
requirement that you
but-
have this board,
but I'm not
right?
gonna do,
Okay.
I'm not doing this tonight.
Okay,
I'm not doing this tonight, but I know what the appellate division have said, and I know what it is when it comes to rights of employees. Any process that you give to the rights of a person that has no meaning, it is not a process. That's what the court has held. There was a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
We adjourn.